It was supposed to be a routine departure, a gleaming Boeing 787 Dreamliner lifting into the sky from Ahmedabad, bound for an international journey that hundreds of passengers had taken countless times before. The weather was perfect, the crew was experienced, and the aircraft had passed its checks without a hint of trouble. But just moments after takeoff, the unthinkable happened. Flight AI-171 plunged into disaster, crashing into a building and igniting a fireball that would claim more than 270 lives. In the aftermath, investigators didn't just find wreckage. They found anomalies so troubling that they have sent shockwaves through the aviation world and straight into the heart of Boeing's corporate headquarters. For decades, the Dreamliner was touted as a marvel of modern engineering, a symbol of efficiency and safety. Now, scientists and investigators are peeling back the layers of this catastrophe, and what they've discovered is threatening not just Boeing's reputation, but the very trust passengers place in the skies above them. The moments leading up to the crash of AI-171 were deceptively normal. The aircraft began its takeoff roll with both Jenks engines roaring at full thrust, climbing into the afternoon sky over Gujarat. Air traffic control monitored a smooth ascent until the aircraft reached just over 600 feet. Suddenly, its climb flattened, airspeed decayed, and within seconds, the stall warning blared inside the cockpit. Then, in a terrifying plunge, the Dreamliner lost lift entirely and fell toward the city below, striking a building before erupting in flames. The scene on the ground was one of chaos and disbelief. First responders battled both wreckage and a growing inferno, while stunned onlookers tried to comprehend how one of the world's most advanced jets could fall from the sky in clear weather. For Air India, the crash was an operational nightmare. Routes canceled, fleets grounded, and public trust fractured. For Boeing, it was the beginning of a crisis that would reach far beyond India's borders. From the moment the scale of the disaster became clear, the Directorate General of Civil Aviation, DGCA of India, launched an unprecedented investigation. But this was no ordinary crash probe. International agencies were brought in immediately, including the U.S. National Transportation Safety Board, NTSB, and the UK Air Accidents Investigation Branch, AAIB. Boeing dispatched its own technical teams to India to assist with the black box analysis and structural inspections. The stakes for Boeing could not have been higher. Early rumors of a possible emergency power system malfunction, something that should only activate in extreme scenarios, raised fears of a systemic design flaw. Regulators across the globe began quietly preparing for the possibility of grounding checks on Dreamliners worldwide, a move that could cost Boeing billions in lost orders, retrofit expenses, and legal liability. The 737 MAX crisis was still fresh in the minds of regulators, and no one was willing to take chances. While engineers examined wreckage, legal teams in multiple countries began drafting contingency plans. Under international aviation law, if negligence in design or manufacturing is proven, Boeing could face unlimited liability, claims that could stretch into the billions, far beyond standard insurance coverage. Markets reacted quickly. Boeing's stock fell sharply as analysts downgraded projections, factoring in potential inspection mandates, retrofits, and a shift in airline purchasing patterns toward Airbus. Leasing companies and national carriers began quietly reevaluating pending orders. For a manufacturer already fighting to restore credibility after years of safety controversies, AI-171's crash was more than a tragedy. It was a potential inflection point in its commercial dominance. Beyond the immediate financial implications, the psychological impact on Boeing's brand was severe. The Dreamliner had been marketed as a revolution in aviation, lighter, faster, more fuel-efficient, and packed with advanced safety systems. But now, that image was under siege. Media coverage emphasized not just the accident itself, but Boeing's recent history of whistleblower allegations, congressional scrutiny, and previous quality control controversies. Passenger surveys revealed growing hesitance to fly on 787s, and airlines with heavy Dreamliner fleets began considering diversification strategies to protect themselves from future program-specific disruptions. For Boeing, this was about more than one crash. It was about convincing the world that the Dreamliner was still the safest choice in the sky. And with investigators uncovering technical anomalies that could point to deeper flaws, the battle for public trust had only just begun. When the flight data recorder, FDR, and cockpit voice recorder, CVR, were finally recovered from the scorched remains of AI-171, hopes were high that they would reveal a clear explanation for the sudden loss of lift and control. But what investigators found inside those devices was not just puzzling, it was alarming. The FDR showed both Jenks engines performing normally during the initial takeoff roll, but 14 seconds after liftoff, engine thrust began to decay rapidly, as if power had been intentionally reduced. There were no indications of bird strikes, fuel starvation, or mechanical seizure. Systems simply responded to data that suggested extreme engine stress, data which, later analysis confirmed, was false. On the CVR, the crew's voices painted a chilling picture. The captain questioned the readings in disbelief. The first officer attempted to restore power, and the stall warning blared relentlessly. The recordings ended not with panic, but with the clipped, urgent tones of pilots trying to follow procedure in a situation they had no way to resolve. This was not a crew failing to react. This was a crew being defeated by an aircraft that seemed to be fighting its own pilots. Forensic engineers turned their attention to the electronic engine control EEC system, the Dreamliner's computerized brain for managing engine performance. Here they found the smoking gun. Both EEC units had received identical erroneous readings from their inlet pressure and temperature sensors. In milliseconds, the system interpreted these values as an over-limit condition and automatically reduced thrust to idle, effectively shutting down the climb. The problem? The environmental conditions for such a reading simply didn't exist that day. The likelihood of two independent sensors feeding identical bad data to both engines at the same moment is astronomically low, unless the fault comes from a shared source, either a common wiring pathway, software anomaly, or a cyber-related interference. The latter possibility, though considered remote, added a layer of urgency and secrecy to the investigation, with certain technical findings restricted from public release. As the investigation progressed, regulators worldwide began to worry about the broader implications. The Federal Aviation Administration, FAA, European Union Aviation Safety Agency, EASA, and several Asian regulators demanded that Boeing provide detailed risk assessments and potential mitigation strategies. Airlines were instructed to run diagnostic sweeps on their Dreamliner fleets, searching for any history of unexplained engine surges, thrust anomalies, or sensor discrepancies. Boeing, under intense scrutiny, issued a carefully worded service bulletin recommending enhanced EEC software checks and temporary adjustments to sensor calibration intervals. While the company maintained that the Dreamliner remained safe to fly, the language of the bulletin made it clear to insiders that Boeing was bracing for a possible directive that could require global inspections and potentially expensive retrofits. The ripple effects of AI-171's crash spread quickly through the aviation industry. Leasing companies began inserting new safety performance clauses into contracts for Boeing deliveries, giving them an exit strategy if regulators grounded Dreamliner fleets. Airbus, sensing an opportunity, intensified marketing efforts for its A350 series, pitching it as a safer, more reliable alternative for long-haul operations. Meanwhile, pilots' unions across several countries began lobbying for changes to automation protocols, arguing that critical systems like the EEC should never have the authority to reduce thrust without explicit pilot override capability. The incident became a rallying point for a broader conversation about how much control should remain in human hands versus automated systems. A debate that has simmered beneath the surface of aviation for decades, but now had a fresh, high-profile example fueling it. The crash of Air India 171 is no longer seen as an isolated tragedy. It is a wake-up call that has sent shockwaves through the highest levels of global aviation. What investigators uncovered in those black boxes was not just a mechanical failure, but a breakdown in the trust between human pilots and the automated systems designed to protect them. Two engines, on one of the most advanced passenger aircraft in the world, simultaneously responded to a threat that didn't exist, robbing the crew of the very power they needed to stay in the air. For Boeing, the implications are as heavy as the grief of the families left behind. This isn't just about replacing a part or patching a line of code. This is about confronting a vulnerability at the heart of modern aircraft design, one that could, under the wrong conditions, bring down any similar jet still flying today. The Dreamliner was supposed to represent the pinnacle of safety, efficiency, and innovation. Now it stands as a reminder that even the most sophisticated systems can fail in ways we never anticipated, and that those failures can happen faster than any human can react. Regulators will demand changes. Airlines will tighten procedures. Engineers will rewrite software and redesign redundancies. But for the aviation community, the real challenge lies in restoring the fragile trust between the passengers who step on board and the machines that carry them across oceans. Because in the end, the lesson of AI 171 is painfully clear. In the age of automation, safety doesn't just depend on the brilliance of technology. It depends on our willingness to question it, challenge it, and make sure it never forgets who it was built to serve. And until every vulnerability is addressed, the skies will never feel quite the same.